Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. My name is Nikki and I'm a senior training consultant for the National Autistic Society. I'm here today to talk to you about autism. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our training and consultancy services, and I'm also going to give you a taster of our autism awareness training, so a very short bit from what we normally deliver in one of our courses. A little bit about our team. We are a team of training consultants with years of experience in developing autism-related training as well as delivering training. We all deliver on different topics, but we do specialize in particular areas. So some of us have an education background, so they're more likely to deliver courses for educational professionals. Some of us have a background in social work and psychology. Some of us have an interest in sensory processing and behavior, and some people have experience within the criminal justice system, so they will deliver training within the criminal justice system. We regularly attend training and conferences that is within the National Autistic Society as well as externally, and we work closely with people on the autism spectrum. In fact, this is part of our ethos, so all of our courses are developed with the input of autistic people. Many courses are co-delivered with consultants who are on the autism spectrum. We review our training courses on a regular basis, which means that every time we come across new information, new knowledge, then we will add this to our courses to make sure that professionals are getting an up-to-date information, really. And we do courses specifically for your organization as well, so I will talk a little bit about this later. So we have a set training, a set portfolio of training courses, but we also do a lot of bespoke courses for organizations. But why? Why do we do that? Why do we want to raise autism awareness? This is because we know that autism affects one in 100. So it is very likely that you will come across people, or you will work with people on the autism spectrum in your professional life. Awareness helps understanding, and understanding helps knowing what to do, what's the best way of supporting people. And of course, understanding and support improves outcomes for people on the autism spectrum as well as their families. For the next few minutes, I'm gonna give you some information around autism, and this comes from our autism awareness course that we deliver to professionals. So, what is autism really? Autism is a difference. It's a different way of thinking, experiencing the world, a different way of learning. Donna Williams puts it very nicely in this quote. She says that autism is a range of ways of experiencing yourself and the world, of processing information about yourself and the world, of relating to yourself and the world, which is different to that experienced by other people. We'll talk a little bit about these differences as we go on, but before I do that, a little bit about language and terminology. There is an ongoing debate around how we talk about autism and indeed how we define autism. On your screen you will see a few terms that you will come across. So Asperger syndrome is one. Classic autism is an older term. Autism spectrum disorder is at the moment the official diagnostic term. So clinicians, when making a diagnosis, that's the term they will use, ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum condition is a term that's quite popular within the practitioner's world. It's a more positive term. And as we said before, autism is more of a difference rather than a disorder, and that's why people have a preference towards using the word condition rather than disorder. However, as I said before, the official diagnosis is ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Sometimes we refer to people with autism, sometimes we refer to people on the autism spectrum, sometimes we use the term autistic. In a recent survey that the NAS took part, we found out that actually people on the autism spectrum have a preference towards the terms autistic and the term people on the autism spectrum rather than people with autism. When we talk about the autism spectrum, you may find that some people will use a rainbow type of illustration. We try to avoid this. The reason being that it seems that with a rainbow there is a beginning, a middle and an end, or a more severe end or a more mild end. What I want to clarify is that there is no severe autism or mild autism. Autism will affect people in many different ways and to a varying degree, and it's important to understand this. People will have different strengths, different skills, and different needs. We prefer to use the sphere, as you can see on your screens. So no beginning, middle, or end, no mild or severe end. People can be anywhere on that sphere. And I've got 5 examples there. But remember that these are just 5 examples. So for example, Peter, who's 9 years old, he's slowly developing language and can communicate some of his needs. He loves playing with his tablet and computer. Joanne is 12 years old. She attends a special school. She finds it difficult to communicate using speech and finds noisy environments difficult to cope with. Jason, who's 19 years old and just finished school and is ready to go to college, his support worker will be there to help him because he finds the transitions difficult. Evie, who's 5, she spends most of her time jumping on the trampoline. When she wants something, she will lead her mother's hand to it. And finally, Nicholas, who's 3 years old. He developed language very quickly and loves talking about his favorite subject, which is dinosaurs. He doesn't like the company of other children, but loves spending time with adults. So just remember that these are just 5 examples. People will be very, very different, and their skills and needs will be very, very different. So the main diagnostic criteria, so when making a diagnosis, clinicians will look at differences with social communication and interaction, differences with social imagination and flexibility of thought, as well as sensory processing differences. In fact, sensory processing differences entered the diagnostic criteria in 2013. So although we've known about sensory processing differences for years, it was only two years ago that this criterion entered the diagnostic criteria for autism. It's a very important area, though. So I'm going to talk about these areas separately. When it comes to communication, we talk about verbal communication and non-verbal communication. In terms of verbal communication, the differences we may see are differences around the use of speech, for example. So some people may have difficulties using speech to communicate. Some people may have, we may see an absence of speech. They may have developed other ways of communicating, but speech is an area of difficulty. This is particularly the case with people that are diagnosed with autism as well as learning disabilities. But people that are not diagnosed with learning disabilities and only have a diagnosis of autism, it's very likely that they won't have any difficulties with speech. So they're going to be very, very articulate. What is important to remember is not to making assumptions on the basis of language only. So, for example, it is likely that although the person is very comfortable expressing themselves verbally, they may struggle a little bit with understanding and processing language. So we need to remember this so that we adapt our communication style to meet the needs of that person. Literal interpretation is another characteristic. And that actually refers to a style, a processing style, where the person on the autism spectrum will interpret information literally. As a result of this, people may struggle with metaphors, for example, or generally language that can be interpreted in many different ways. That can be confusing to an autistic person, and again we have to take that under consideration and make sure that our language is specific and it doesn't have a double meaning, which may confuse some people. In terms of non-verbal communication, some of the differences include possible difficulties in interpreting facial expressions as well as using facial expressions. Sometimes we may observe a different way of using eye contact. At times we may see a lack of eye contact. We need to remember to respect that different style of using eye contact. Because many people on the autism spectrum have reported that it's overwhelming when they have to listen to something as well as look at someone's face. It can be processing too much information, and as a result they would prefer to look somewhere else instead of someone's face or eyes in specific. Again, body language can be confusing for some people on the autism spectrum, and as a result of this, we may observe that some people may not use body language themselves to communicate or to add to the meaning of what they're trying to say. And finally, speech intonation, which refers to the rhythm of language. Again, that gives a lot of meaning to what we say, and some people on the autism spectrum may struggle to pick this up as well as use it. So again, we need to be careful in terms of our communication. In terms of social interactions, generally we see three different styles. We may come across people who have a preference towards being on their own and are not necessarily motivated to initiate social interactions. They have a preference on being on their own. Many people will want to initiate interactions, will want to develop friendships or relationships, but the person may struggle with the initiation. So how to do it really? Sometimes people may want to initiate. May want to develop friendships and relationships, but they won't necessarily initiate. But as long as someone else encourages them to do so, then they will be happy within a group situation. In terms of social imagination, it's important here to clarify that by imagination we do not mean creativity. Imagination refers to the ability, if you like, to think outside the here and now. So think about the future and plan for the future, or think about alternatives, or thinking about different options. So that's one way of using our imagination. Some people on the autism spectrum may show a different style again in this area. So in children, for example, we may observe limited symbolic and pretend play, which is something that clinicians will look at during the diagnostic process. As a result of limited imagination, we may find that people tend to show an intense focus to a specific activity or a specific interest, if you like, a hobby, and also a desire for routines and an insistence on sameness. As a result of this, people may struggle with change, particularly with change that is unpredictable and change that they haven't been prepared for. So it's a myth to just say that people on the autism spectrum will struggle with change. It is the unpredictable change that people may find challenging. Finally, as a result of imagination differences, we may find that some children or adults on the autism spectrum may struggle with organizing themselves, planning for the future, predicting the future, or even figuring out other people's thoughts and intentions and knowledge, which, as you can imagine, will affect the person's social interaction skills. Moving on to sensory processing, when we talk about sensory processing, we're looking at 7 areas. Five of these areas you will be very familiar with, so taste, hearing, vision, touch and smell. There are 2 other areas of sensory processing. This is proprioception and vestibular, and they refer mainly to our body awareness and body balance. Again, autistic people will show a different way of processing information from the senses. Very often what we see is either hyposensitivities or hypersensitivities. Hyposensitivities means that there is too little coming in. So it is very likely that we may see sensory seeking behaviors. Hypersensitivities, on the other hand, means that there is too much coming in. So I'm hypersensitive to noise, for example, so there is too much coming in, and I may show sensory avoidance behaviors. So I may try and shut my ears if I feel there is too much noise coming in. The interesting thing about sensory processing is that these perceptions can change on a daily basis. So people may move from being hyposensitive to being hypersensitive, and that actually makes it really difficult for people on the autism spectrum, but also for professionals who are supporting people, because it's difficult to understand and sometimes even difficult to predict when this may happen. Donna Williams, again, it's in an attempt to emphasize the importance of sensory processing. This is what she says. She says that sensory sensitivity in any form can make it difficult to concentrate, to trust, at attending to things other than the source of hypersensitivity, to join in or to relax. If the discomfort or distraction is extreme enough, they can distract from the abilities to learn. So it's really important for us as professionals to understand the person's sensory processing profile as much as we can, and make sure we make changes to the environment and changes to our interaction style to meet those the person's needs. I'm going to talk a little bit about anxiety, because anxiety is a characteristic of autism. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that autistic people will experience heightened levels of anxiety most of the times. In fact, there is some literature that suggests that autistic people will show 3 times more anxiety than people with learning disability. And as you can imagine, this will affect everything. It will have an impact on everyday life, work, community access, and of course it's going to have an impact on the family as well. Niki, another guy who's on the autism spectrum, is giving his reason for his anxiety, and for him it's about how he's perceiving things. So he says, always lurking at the back of my mind is an anxiety about whether or not I'm perceiving things in the same way that people without autism do. And Temple Grandin, when she tries to explain how this could be, she says, just imagine how you felt when you did something really anxiety-provoking, such as your first public speaking engagement. Now just imagine if you felt that way most of the time for no reason. Okay? Really important to recognize this when working with with people on the autism spectrum. Now, the causes of anxiety is all of the things we've talked about so far. So communication differences will create a lot of anxiety. Interpreting people's emotional responses. A chaotic environment will cause a lot of anxiety. Sensory processing, as you can imagine, will cause stress and anxiety. If your sensory processing style changes throughout the day in an unpredictable way, then of course it's going to create anxiety. Interacting with other people or not knowing how to interact with other people can cause anxiety. Planning for the future, preparing for the future, as well as unfamiliar experiences. So not knowing what to expect will bring anxiety in the same way it will for all of us, in a way. Now, a little bit about supporting people on the autism spectrum. These are some of the things that we are looking at, and at the center of everything is developing trust and rapport, which means really getting to know the person, who they are, and how autism affects that person. Because as we said, it will be very different to other people. It's also about using strengths. And making sure we are engaging in people's interests and using their skills. Some of the first things we need to be doing when supporting people in order to develop trust. In terms of our language, I've already mentioned a few of those. We need to be precise with our language, try and use short sentences, avoid abstract language, avoid metaphors, sarcasm, humor, and also abstract language such as soon or later, because what does that really mean? It has too many meanings. It's important to also recognize that some people on the autism spectrum may show some processing language delays, which means that we need to be taking a step back and waiting instead of repeating ourselves, because when we repeat ourselves, then we just create more anxiety, and because we are overloading the person with information. So just learn to wait and recognize a different processing style. Make sure you have the person's attention when you're interacting with them, and also make sure you're providing the person with the necessary structures so that you make tasks and environments meaningful, and the person is prepared for what is coming up. Most of the times we will do that visually by using pictures. And these are some of the pictures, some examples of pictures we would use. So you can see there are examples of pictures that we would use to teach emotions or give the person a tool of expressing their emotions. Sometimes we may use objects of reference, depending on the person's understanding. Sometimes we may create schedules where the person can see all the steps involved within a task so that they know what's coming up, really. Written words are also visuals that we would use for people that have developed the ability to learn, the ability to read and write. Obviously, we would use written words for that. Our offer, what we do within our training and consultancy services. We offer courses to professionals within the education sector, social care or health, and really anyone who works with or supports children or adults on the autism spectrum. We have a set portfolio of training courses that we offer in-house, so we will come to your organization and we will deliver a course. Sometimes we organize open access events where we will organize the course, we will find the venue, and then people will just sign up to attend the course. We have specialized training, and I'm going to give you some examples later. We also have online training modules on autism-related topics, obviously. We do a lot of bespoke training. We have courses in partnerships with universities, and we do a lot of consultancy as well. These are some topics for you. Understanding people on the autism spectrum. This is our basic autism awareness course. We offer that as a full-day course or a half-day course. Supporting people on the autism spectrum using the SPELL framework. The SPELL framework is a framework developed by the National Autistic Society. We do a course on sensory considerations, understanding stress and anxiety in autism and impact on behavior, and also understanding and supporting anxiety in early years children with autism. I forgot to mention that we also do courses for employers. So it's what we call employment training. So we will work with employers on how to manage employees who may be on the autism spectrum. Some of our more specialist topics include learning to wee and poo in the right place, so continence problems in children with autism, understanding and supporting children with pathological demand avoidance, and autism in maturity. There are many more which you can find on our website. These are our contact details, so if you're interested in one of our training courses, or you want to ask a question about our training courses, then you'd contact training inquiries. So training.inquiries@nas.org.uk. If you know exactly what you want, then you will contact our bookings. So training.bookings@nas, and I've got the numbers there as well. For online training, it is online.training@nas.org.uk. Our website will give you all the information you need around our courses and our services. A very good resource is Network Autism. It is an online platform for professionals within the autism field. You can sign up for free. You can find out a lot of information, and you can take part in online chats and discussions that take place over different topics, and yeah, you can find a lot of information. For you today, we offer a 5% discount on our in-house and open access courses. So if you want to make any bookings until December this year, just contact our training inquiries quoting Unite so that we know, and you can ask for your 5% discount on our courses. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful. I think we are ready to take questions.